Hey, everybody, I'm Erica Lukes, and this is UFO Classified. I am happy to be here tonight. I want to thank all of you for getting into chat and being so excited about my guest this evening. Of course, we are excited. Jack, my partner in crime, is very excited to be here with Tanner Boyle. And if you don't know Tanner, which I'm assuming most of you here do, Tanner Boyle writes Getting Spooked, which is one of my favorite things to read. It's a newsletter about supernatural psyops and the intersection between the paranormal and parapolitical. It examines ufology, all sorts of things, history, the fringe, and conspiratorial thinking, among many other things. So, in my opinion, it is refreshing. It is much needed. And I have been really enjoying getting to know Tanner over the past, gosh, it's been probably over a year, at least a year, right, Tanner?
Oh yeah. Well, I've been familiar with you guys for a long time. It feels like because I used to watch UFO Classified long ago. Read the UFO Trail long ago. Before I even knew who was behind either of those things really. So it's really been nice to get to know you guys.
Yeah, no, it's been really, really fun. And I mean, yours is probably the first place that I go to look for information, your blog. And I admire the work that you do and the fact that you have the wherewithal to see behind the scenes and to understand the dynamics and to understand kind of the delusions and the game playing that takes place in this field. Because a lot of people get into it and they're believing, I mean, what Lou Elizondo is promoting. They're believing what, Skinwalker Ranch or some of these other people, Stephen Greer, people like that are promoting. And as you and I both know, that can put you down rabbit holes that don't have necessarily much to do with anything fruitful.
Yeah, I sometimes feel like a broken record, but a broken clock is right twice a day, and a broken record, if it's right, is right all of the time. Uh, I just came up with that on the fly,
That was
but
a really good one.
thank you. Yeah, no, the longer I've been reading up on things like this, the more I kind of see that the real story is in it's more in the social interactions than anything. And as you said, there's a lot of game playing. There's a lot of delusional people. There's a lot of con men. And I think where those things kind of intersect is kind of where I find my interest. Because, con men and spooks and delusional people can sometimes all be the same person. So I mean, especially in this field. So I think that's where I find the most interesting stuff.
And I mean, I feel the same way, and I just want to give a shout out to everybody in chat tonight. It's really good to see all of you. And Bill, it's nice to see you again from Australia, and Lord Ludacris, and Steve Long, and Amy Collins. And so, if I haven't addressed you, and Emily, of course, we love Emily, and Fringe Quest. Yeah, I've got the gang is here tonight, so I just want to give a shout out. And Jim, thank you guys so much for being here. But okay, sorry, I went off on that tangent, and we're gonna bring
No,
Jack back
that's
in really
okay.
quickly. It's a
Uh,
problem I have on a Friday night.
no, it's okay. I love Emily probably as much as you guys do, if I'm being honest.
I bet you do,
Yeah.
and I have to say that I just think she's so wonderful and talented and smart, and I really enjoy listening to both of you, interview and do what you do on your blog, Getting Spooked. It's really fun.
Oh, thank you. Um, yeah. Excuse me. Yeah, I want to give a shout out to Steve as well because he called over on Getting Spooked. We have me, Bradley, Emily, and our friend Reed do uh, the the Nomiary podcast, which is like the aviary but with gnomes, essentially. And yeah, Steve called us the young guns, referring to the young guns that George Knapp shouted out way back in, so that was probably 2017 times. Um, And I was just thinking, like, none of those other young guns were that young, and I don't feel that young, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, well, I'm telling you, this subject ages you. Like, it's like
Oh yeah,
20 years for every 1 year you spend in the topic, for
oh yeah.
sure. But and
That's
and anything with gnomes, I quite like, as you know. So,
right. Oh, same. Well, and that's why Jack looks so young, because he took like a decade-long break from ufology or something like that.
is that what
That's
it is, Jack?
that's his
Yeah,
secret.
yes, ufology has been a fountain of youth for me. Absolutely, yes.
Mm, I know you're
Yeah.
kidding, but
Yeah,
okay.
Tanner, you do those round tables with Emily and Bradley and Reed. How did that develop, and how what kind of feedback are you getting about those?
So feedback has been good. Usually it's not. This is changing. It didn't used to be it was on the episodes themselves, but sometimes we'd eventually hear like, "When's the next gnome thing coming out?" And I was like, "Oh, people actually liked that." And really, it we have phone calls, like conference calls, quite regularly anyway. So it just seemed like a natural extension, and it is really mostly unedited, except for me censoring things, which has become a bit of a running gag. Um, yeah. Um,
So what kinds of things are you censoring?
Names, dates, places. No, I'm just kidding.
All the things
It's
you can't tell me because you're censoring them, but, that's
well,
okay.
well, no, I can. Well, I mean, you'd know the people, I think, but I'm mostly just trying not to, you know,
Yeah. Well,
spread.
what would people hear discussed when they tune in to one of your roundtables?
Uh, well, so we discuss pretty much everything. Uh, it's kind of about the paranormal, but then it'll eventually turn into parapolitical. Um, Current news, even, will just kind of reflect on like pop culture stuff. Um, I just thought, like, I'm not a big podcaster, essentially, because I mean I'm very like careful when I write, and you simply can't do that in the podcast format, really, because or else you'd have to be like, hey, I need to call you guys back in again so we can talk about this differently. And you mumbled at this point, all that. So I think it's been a nice exercise in just kind of letting our hair down a bit. Um, and Obviously, that core four, I'm intending for each of them to kind of be like, Emily and Reed already have like guest articles coming out, and I think Bradley's working on one as we speak. So um, I don't know. I just like I like my friends. I like. I mean, I'm married to one of them, so that's a given. But sort of the core group that I really appreciate. And we each kind of bring something different to the table. I think that's why the round table works so well. There's a lot of different perspectives, but we all kind of broadly have an understanding of what the other's saying. Um, yeah,
You
I'm
guys are
glad you guys like them.
you guys are a good team, and I love the way you play off each other. I think that's really fun. I like
Oh,
it.
yeah.
And you always I mean, each one of you is very skilled in researching specific topics. Like you
Mhm.
said, you bring diversity to what you're doing, and that really shows. It's very cool.
Yeah, I definitely like that bit because it's like each of us is an expert in, some random thing, some niche thing. And if the other ever asks a question, you can direct it to someone in particular. And yeah, yeah, it's. I think it's been good. We've got another one scheduled for after the new year, so there's more of that coming.
And so what I've got to ask you, because I was listening last night, to your interview with Mark Pilkington,
Mhm.
And so talk a little bit about, we've had Mark Pilkington on Expanding Frontiers Research and then UFO Classified several times. But talk a little bit about your interview and what you learned from Mark Pilkington.
Oh, sure. So obviously, Mark Pilkington's Mirage Men, honestly, he's written a lot of other things and the paranormal related stuff. And when I was younger, I remember him being in the Fortean Times all the time. So I've always been a big fan. And Mirage Men, I think, was formative on this tiny little clique of ufology that I think um, it sort of made them think about things differently. Maybe they're okay with asking uncomfortable questions. Um, so I just kind of wanted to talk to Mark about. He had written another article, which the name is escaping me at the moment, but it was looking at um, supernatural psyops more broadly. So the specific instance that sticks with me is the British intelligence services would use, or they would stage like satanic ritual sites and blame the IRA for them in an attempt to like dissuade people from joining or to sort of demonize them. And I'm not sure how well it worked, but uh, like that's sort of what comes up every time a supernatural psyop comes up. It's never clear how effective it actually was. Like we talked a bit about the other ones in like Southeast Asia, Edward Lansdale, and the vampire psychological operation. He'd also do like it. It wasn't Lansdale, but in Vietnam you had Operation Wandering Soul, which it sounds like was totally ineffective because the Viet Cong would just shoot it wherever the noise was coming from, which was usually an American plane, which is the opposite of what was intended of from that. But yeah, Mark just brings an interesting perspective because he's willing to like zoom out and see that it's not just ufology where these kind of like psychological operations take place. It's kind of the broad swath of the paranormal. Anywhere like sort of like a spiritual belief is or something like that. Yeah. And I've been looking into Ed Lansdale myself recently um, because I've spent a lot of time researching this figure named Bosco Nedeljkovic, who essentially uh, blew the whistle somewhat on the CIA abducting people in South America, and that turned into alien abduction, more specifically like Villas Boas, one of the earliest ones. And Nedeljkovic had actually written to Ed Lansdale at one point, and I'm not sure if he ever wrote back. But it's just interesting because Lansdale did the vampire thing in Vietnam, and he also just kind of was very interested in like cultural anthropology, like using a society's culture against them as warfare. He had a plan in Cuba that was never implemented to do like a fake Virgin Mary hologram, and I don't know. Like I think it's one of the underlooked um, aspects of warfare, and I think it's especially underlooked when it comes to people interested in the paranormal. They don't necessarily think of it as something that can be weaponized. Obviously, you two do, and that's why I like you guys so much. But yeah, it's one of those uncomfortable things. And Mark is always super accessible with it and can explain it much better than I can in most instances.
So, I mean, some of the names that you mentioned with regard to, promoting this kind of stuff, they're still very prevalent names today about, some of these abductions in South America. And so, who are the people that you know of today that are currently promoting that as a real alien abduction?
Villas Boas still comes up quite a bit. I've noticed, like, I think it needs to be looked at more in South America because I know there was that case recently of like aliens on jetpacks. Do you guys remember that?
Oh, how could we forget? That was rather traumatizing, actually.
Yeah. And I never heard a great explanation for it, but I think they concluded that it was like illegal miners or something like that. And um, but then it just kind of died, and I've never really seen I want further explanation. Like, I'll take your word for it that it was like miners who weren't supposed to be there, but I want a little more clarity in how they were operating. Um, but that was turned into like, like alien invasion stuff by countless people on social media. And I think the lack of clarity, even in the like grounded explanation, has made like those conspiracy theories proliferate more. Uh, because I don't know. I think that's why I'm kind of obsessed with explaining everything to death, because when you leave in that wiggle room, it very quickly gets filled up with, you know, disclosure dreams. As we can see from the new Spielberg trailers, making
Oh
everybody
my
lose their
lord.
minds. Yeah.
Oh my lord. I'm so glad that you brought that up because I'm just sitting there watching social media going, "Are you freaking kidding me? This movie is the movie he's disclosing all these, I mean, it's like he's been doing this for 40 years." Like,
hmm Yeah, it's kind of it's nuts because I don't know. Like, I know people think that like Close Encounters hold some kind of like hidden truth or something like that, but I was talking about this with Bradley earlier, and it was more like he is just very knowledgeable of the subculture. Well, I wouldn't even say very knowledgeable. He's somewhat knowledgeable, and he uses those elements for his science fiction. Uh, but I don't know. I don't know what the impulse is that makes you think like hidden messages in Spielberg films. Like, they didn't do that with West Side Story or The Fablemans, you
maybe
know?
tonight's the night. Let's
Right.
think of some conspiracies. What's really interesting to me is all of a sudden there are tons of groups on social media that appear to be from a marketing team that
Mhm.
could be from, when you look at them, could be from a foreign country, which is really interesting. And they're all over and they're promoting, all these debunked cases, and they're promoting really heavily the new movie that just came out, as along with,
Really?
giving people like all these ideas that, oh my God, Spielberg is talking about this movie, and this is it, this is disclosure and all of this. And so there's a big marketing push, and
Yeah.
Lord knows what the agenda is, is with all of this. It's like it's quite interesting to watch. And it
Yeah.
it bums me out a little bit that I see people that I would hope would know better kind of getting involved in some of these groups, and I just think, "Oh my lord, come on now."
Yeah, and I think AI too has kind of pushed, like like, I was watching I'm a big fan of Tubi, Tubi TV, the
Yeah,
streaming service. Um, and it is full of so many AI, alien, or Bigfoot documentaries that it's insane. Uh, and I click on one with hope that it will be real, and no, it's just kind of an AI regurgitating like previous cases. Sometimes in the Bigfoot ones, I feel like it even makes them up. Like, I can't find evidence that this stuff ever happened. Um, yeah, and I think that's become another like tool for like these marketing type of things. Like you said, like it's pretty much perfect for them because they can churn stuff out very quickly It can be attractive, eye-catching, um, and yeah, I don't know. I'm always surprised at how well the UFO stuff does in terms of like clicks. Like I've never really understood it myself because I've always felt like this is like the fringe, but I think it's becoming more mainstream. Is that because of Rogan?
Oh God. Um, well, a lot of things have become mainstream because of him, and that's not good at all. But in my opinion, I'm not a big fan of his. I think he's promoted a lot of really stuff, a lot of conspiracy theories, and a lot of stuff that's kind of detrimental to society in general. But um, I think it's, maybe because of Rogan. I think it's because, like, as we know, like Knapp and Lazar and the whole crew, they're always Jeremy Corbell and the whole
Yeah,
gang is a part of that network. And so they've definitely got that going on. And then you throw in the new disclosure team, and he's interviewing all of them, and then they play off each other, and it's so fascinating. It's fascinating and alarming to me to see just the good old bros club,
oh yeah,
promoting stories and promoting things that have been verified as hoaxes over the years, and these guys just keep making money. And
yeah, yeah. The ecosystem is just kind of strange, though. Um, I don't know. I, I I feel like it's like if Coast to Coast was, like where people got their news. But and I mean, people did that back in the Coast to Coast days. But I feel like it's just a broader, like people are getting their news from the MMA podcast version of Coast to Coast. Uh, and it's spawned an entire like ecosystem of people who are imitating, and that's kind of what's interesting to me, especially with some of the spooks that wind up uh, on each one of them, uh, sometimes intersecting with ufology. Uh, yeah,
are these people really spooks?
that's often a good question. I think some of them are, and some of them are not. Which you'd think you'd do your research as like Joe Rogan or something, but I feel like half the time uh, they're getting like the real deal, and then the other half it's like some guy who was a spook for a year and left, and then tried to market himself as a spook. Uh,
Are you referring to anybody in particular?
let me think. I mean, someone is coming to mind, but I can't think of his name. He's the guy with the hair. You know what
Oh
I'm
my
talking
God.
about?
Well, don't they all have some form of
Well,
hair?
like the big curly hair. He's sells like a private intelligence app now. He was on Beyond Skinwalker.
Well, I didn't watch that. I had to stop after
Well, I don't
whatever the
blame
first show was, but he's got big curly hair. Okay, now I'm kind of frightened there.
you. Yeah, I think someone in chat certainly knows, but we'll see. Um, yeah, there's guys like that, and then I think there are some real ones mixed in there. Uh, but I don't know. It's just become an interesting information network that is has kind of an outsized influence on the world at large. And I think when I was younger, I couldn't have anticipated that UFOs or pseudo archaeology or any of these things would have that much cultural cachet. Um, it's more of an observation. I don't know what any of it means, but I find it strange.
There
Steve
we
is right.
go.
Andrew
Here, right
Bustamante.
here. Yep.
Yeah. He's on Beyond Skinwalker for some reason.
Oh God. Okay, so
Uh,
what do you think of him? Because he's everywhere.
yeah. I mean, that's what I don't know, like he's not first of all, he's not old enough to actually be like an old guard spook of any sort of, you know. He's either currently still on the payroll, so to speak, or he's just trying to market himself as such. And honestly, I don't know which of those two things is the correct answer. But I find it interesting he's on Beyond Skinwalker because I
Oh,
don't he wasn't interested in any of that stuff. I think he just saw a role there. So it might be completely monetarily influenced.
well, and he like, like Sean Ryan, I
Hmm.
mean, it's like all these guys kind of appeared out of nowhere. And I mean, I will say Sean Ryan has got like, I mean, he's got some money behind him,
Oh yeah.
and again, he's bringing on the same cast of characters. And, I'm ex, like, whatever I am. What wasn't he like in the Navy SEALs or just, I don't know, something?
He says he's a Navy SEAL, a former CIA contractor, where he admits to trafficking drugs. By the way, that's part of his resume that he advertises. um, yeah, and you've got the president on there. You've got the vice president on there, the director of the FBI, and also Chris Bledsoe. I
I
find
mean,
I find that incredible. That's such an incredible thing. It'd be like if Barack Obama was talking to George Knapp on 2009 Coast to Coast AM. You know.
well, you can bet that that wouldn't happen and didn't happen. And that goes to show this is why the world is in chaos right now. But and,
Yeah.
like, I mean, you look back at Coast to Coast, you're talking about that, or even Art Bell, and you look back on some of the guests or, that he brought on and the topics, and it always leaned pretty far in one political direction. And
Mhm.
you could talk about UFOs and Bigfoot and all of this stuff, but then, pushing these kind of radical ideas, distrust your government. We've got to just, we're not trusting NASA. We're not doing all of these things. And it's really been
Yeah.
fascinating to watch this and zoom out, like you mentioned, and then just kind of look at all the players and all the messages they've been promoting and how now they've all really been kind of a part of gutting what we know as, our country and
Yeah.
what we did, and even in the UFO spaces to watch for years how people have been disparaging NASA and
Yeah.
things. And then, okay, well, now we've got a new director who's friends with Elon Musk, and it's very interesting. And none of this to me and to you, I'm sure, and to Jack has anything to do with UFOs or studying something that is a genuine phenomena. This is just political theater
Yeah.
for certain people in a certain party's gain.
Yeah. I found it very telling. I don't know what. I'll leave it vague, but Marco Rubio spearheading the invasion of Venezuela, essentially, and kind of talking out the other side of his mouth. He's doing the UFO tour. He's talking about Age of Disclosure on national TV. Um, and I don't know. There's something nefarious about that. Um, I've seen that with Ross Coulthart too. Like I remember when there was a whole bunch of unrest about um, ICE taking on, you know, civilians some of the time, and uh, Ross, in all his wisdom, has Customs and Border Patrol whistleblower on, and I don't know. I feel like it's just kind of like normalizing these agencies as like cool and infallible, and yeah, they're interested in the same stuff you are, and then they get away with just insane nonsense, you know. Um, and it's completely eroding the foundations of what these uh, institutions are supposed to represent. Um, yeah, and then the teal interest too kind of recurs a lot. And he clearly has a vested interest in sort of subsuming a lot of these uh, government institutions that are dying or eroded. And
I first saw NASA getting accused of cover-ups and nefarious activity to do with UFOs, and I just remember thinking, wow, that I don't really know how to look at that other than it's people that don't understand what NASA does, or it's people trying to confuse others who don't understand what NASA does, you know?
yeah, no, well, and that's another thing. Like NASA, a lot of people I feel like wouldn't assume this, but they're huge in like tracking global climate change. Um, and that's another thing that a certain side wants to erode. Um, so if you can kind of get them as the bad guy in UFO conspiracies, it can kind of serve the role that you want it to, without necessarily revealing what your intentions for destroying it. Um, yeah, I mean they've been the big bad ever since Menzel.
Yeah, yeah. We have a lot of records forthcoming, by the way, on Donald Menzel. And one of the things I do find interesting about that is at one point he was accused of being one of the MJ-12. And there's so many things wrong with that theory that I can't even, I'm not going to take the time to even go down that rabbit hole. But it's interesting in the context of, so that's so ridiculous, we just won't talk about it. We'll just pretend that part was never in the MJ-12 while we promote the MJ-12 as feasible and reliable, you know,
Right.
conjecture. Yeah.
He is listed in one of the purported documents, right?
Yeah, he was supposed to have been one of the 12. Yeah.
It kind of gives the game away a little bit. That'd be like releasing MJ-12 in 1980s and saying Phil Klass is actually a member of MJ-12,
Yeah,
keeping the UFO truth from everyone.
it is like if it was more that was doing it, then, you know, maybe it was an inside joke of sorts. And another thing relevant about that, James Carrion was instrumental in giving me some records pertaining to Moore and Hillencoder letters with exchanged with Menzel. And then I was able to find more correspondence at a philosophical society that was stored between correspondence between Menzel and Hillencoder. And yeah, that really gives the game away too. And
Mhm.
well, are we supposed to think that they wrote these letters with the intention of them being discovered to help hide the MJ-12? Because these two men are arguing about the credibility of the flying saucer stories. And
Right.
so it's like, how does all of that get left out of the narrative by these people that are supposedly scrupulous researchers that are trying to uncover everything? I ask rhetorically, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why. I don't know. I'm sure this is true for you too, but I feel like it's in the details like that that you can really sort of start mining either like like a full story or like some analysis that hasn't already happened. Um, like contradictory details like that. Um, no, that it is interesting. Um, I don't know. Like you still hear about MJ-12 as if it's real. It's kind of crazy. Um,
Absolutely. I bet if you search YouTube, you'd find a podcast in the last 30 days on the MJ12. Yeah.
Yeah. And I say that as someone who thinks that code probably existed, but it referred to something else. In fact, I think that is another instance where the game has given up a little bit. When you look at the prior uses of magic in military documents. But yeah, I don't know, like Menzel especially, like, I always find the arch skeptic of each era interesting. Like I've always been a big, because we're still under the Philip J. Klass UFO curse. We know nothing more than we did a decade ago, despite the New York Times telling me differently. And yeah, now what do you make of that, Jack?
Well, first of all, let me apologize for my jumping in and out with my technical problems. But going back to some things you brought up earlier, those are really good topics that you brought up. British intelligence, its influence, their willingness to do psyops and to use the paranormal in the psyops. Edward Lansdale was just brilliant. I mean, he is a great research project in and of himself. Again, to mention Carry On, an overlooked aspect of his work is the competence of the British intelligence services and their manipulation of the American public to gain support for the United States involvement in World War II.
Mm-hmm.
And interestingly enough, fun fact, Ivan Sanderson was a British press officer, was what he was doing in New York at the end of the war, who then went on to be influential in the, the Bigfoot community and the crypto animals or whatever it is they call them, and UFOs. He was in there and had an eye on NICAP and was keeping notes on NICAP. And then, as our recent research shows, Sanderson initiated contact with the FBI about his concerns of things he saw going on at the New York Saucer Information Bureau. It's just really difficult to square all of these circumstances. In fact, you don't even have to pretend to square them. The paranormal, as your research indicates, as my research indicates, as EFR's research indicates, has been exploited by the global intelligence community. It just, as that's shown to be the case again and again. And why that is for a different reason from one circumstance to the next. There's not a simple, here's why they do it, and it continues. And I would go as far as to say that if it was important not to reveal what that reason was, then we still don't know. And they were really, really good at what they did. Like what Lansdale allowed, what the released records allow us to know about Lansdale should be enough indication that he was really, really good at what he did. And, Tanner, an example I like to give is the Argo story, the extraction of Americans out of Tehran during the crisis, that if people in the UFO community had learned that the CIA had set up a cover as a Hollywood production studio in LA, and that they had purchased a script having to do with a war on an alien planet, if you gave us 1,000 guesses, we wouldn't have come up with in order to extract hostages or extract hidden embassy employees out of Iran. I mean, if they're really, really good at deception,
Yeah.
direction, and so on. Yes.
Yeah, no, that Argo example is good, especially with we were talking about the Spielberg trailer, you know. Uh, and like if they had, if there was like, as you said, if they saw that script, they would assume it was cover for a UFO story before they assumed it was cover for recovering the Iranian hostages, you know. And no, it is just I wanted to bring it back to Sanderson though, because I think that's, as you said, it's different, its utilization in each scenario. And I think ufology has gotten the brunt of like the notice as far as it goes for intelligence usage. But uh, Sanderson's interest in cryptozoology is interesting because a lot of, not a lot of, but I think some of the early Yeti expeditions were essentially excuses for reconnaissance or spying. And that's kind of existed in archaeology as well. I was talking with Emily about that. MK Jessup was essentially involved in an archaeological reconnaissance thing that was really just cover for spying on behalf of the United Fruit Company in one instance, I think.
Oh,
And of course, we know that didn't go anywhere.
yeah, our show with Dr. Jeb Card, we go into that quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Archaeologist, and he's interested in spooks in ufology because it has such a history in his field. Absolutely, yeah, and yes, State Department documents show how supposed Yeti hunts were to get CIA personnel into the Himalayas and into Tibet. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think some of, I'm sure that happens in ufology too, where they're going to these sensitive areas. I mean, I've talked about, I'm maybe getting tunnel vision a little bit, but there's 1,000 things that sound interesting and super cool that can cover up cloak and dagger type stuff. So, you know, any ufologist trip abroad to somewhere interesting, any remote viewer, parapsychologist trip abroad to somewhere interesting should kind of, and I know that happened with the Secret Life of Plants people quite a bit as well. There's some evidence of, you know, circumstantial evidence of some espionage going on in the background at like Eastern European psychotronics conferences. And yeah, that's interesting with Sanderson though.
My theory with Argo that we were discussing is that it was not an arbitrary decision to use that particular script. Like,
Mhm.
reason was because then they told Iranian customs that we're here because of the landscape. We need, you know, your
Mhm.
looks like an alien planet that we don't have in the US, supposedly. But my pet theory is that they wanted to do geeky UFO alien stuff because it got officials and customs to push them on and get them through, and people avert from you. You know, like try going to a party and telling them about UFOs and see how quick people move you along,
Oh, I use that as a tactic if I'm trying to get out of a conversation.
How does it work for you? Because people just kind of flock to me when I start talking about that. Ugh.
Yeah, it depends on the party, I guess. I think you got too many UFO curious people at your parties.
You know what? I really don't.
No,
I think they're just like, I mean, I'm telling you, because I've got such a wide swath of people, and a majority of my friends do not care about this at all. But
Yeah.
I think because it is so prevalent now, and they are seeing, stories on CNN and, all these other, outlets and things. And so they're kind of a little bit curious, and then they're, just maybe want to see how, crazy the story can get and things like that. I don't know. It's more of a party favor trick or something.
Right.
One more point about Sanderson and British intelligence before we move along is there does seem to be kind of an interesting thing in the US about, oh, well, they're British, don't worry about it. Like they're allies, or they're not competent, or something that makes people just kind of generally underestimate the significance. Like they look with more concern towards American
Yeah.
officers than they do British, which is kind of interesting. Like I honestly, I don't even know of any other UFO researchers or people that discuss Sanderson was a British press officer. I don't know anyone that even discusses that. Like it just doesn't even matter. Well,
Yeah, but does anybody discuss this, Jack? I mean, I think the three of us and maybe the people in chat are the only people that do.
Jack, I'll do you one better. I've got another interesting possible British intelligence connection. I did a podcast long time ago talking about the film Ghost Watch, which is like a found footage BBC thing that scared the pants off of a bunch of people in the UK because they thought it was real. But the one of the advisors to that was Guy Leon Playfair. He's like a British parapsychologist who is probably most famous for the what's it called? The infield poltergeist. And he had an interesting career before joining the Psychical Society for Psychical Research. He was, like Bosco Nedeljkovic, he worked for USAID in Brazil as he was press, but you can kind of assume that it was probably some form of like soft power propaganda, especially in Brazil in that time period. They were kind of ramping up military involvement. And he spent a lot of his time in Brazil going around to like spiritualists and healers and psychic surgeons, things like that. But I don't know. I always just found it interesting that he's British, but he's working for USAID in Brazil, and he's going up to all of these spiritualist things, and psychic surgery winds up cropping up in a bunch of different things. I think I may be making this up, but I feel like the CIA was interested in it at one point. Not because they thought it worked, but because they thought the like sleight of hand involved could be useful. I may need a fact check on that. Someone in chat can fact check that. I may be going off of vibes there.
I think you're right. That popular 70s book that was the guy's name, Surgeon of the Rusty Knife.
Arrigo.
Yes. I seem to recall reading that the CIA had an interest in that publication or something. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, and some would say that I think John Fuller wrote that, so it's possible a CIA writer, an asset, not necessarily like fully on the payroll, but there's been a lot of talk about some of the interesting. I mean, you talk about that in the Grays Have Been Framed too.
I do.
But yeah, and a lot of. So I'm still working my way through Jacques Vallée's diaries, and interestingly, I think quite a few of the people in his orbit go down to South America to look at psychic surgery happening, and I think
So they
Heinrich
say.
is one of them, which is interesting. What's that?
So they say.
Yeah, that's true. You can't always believe everything he says, but yeah, no, yeah. There's sometimes where it seems like, oh, this person took a trip here, and then later on it'll be like, turns out they never took a trip here, or they say they were never there, and it's maddening.
Yeah. You mentioned USAID. One of the things that escapes the collective UFO community, in my opinion, that they would be well served to invest more attention in, is pretty much historians of the intelligence services and the global intelligence community would tell us that you show me a program that's taking financial aid to another country, and I'll show you an intelligence operation.
Mm-hmm.
Not every one of them, not always, but it's at this point just common knowledge. I'm sure even the CIA and the State Department acknowledge that you said has been used by the intelligence services. And that goes into my book Wayward Sons, and the people that incorporated NICAP were the organization that was a forerunner to USAID. They were contracted with to supposedly do humanitarian work and computer training and things like that in China. And I understand, I get it, that people that wanted to learn about a UFO and picked up a Jacques Vallée book or a John Keel book, I get it.
Oh no, did we lose Jack?
We're just having fun times tonight. It's like a roving.
Right. Someone hits the button to swap out.
Well, I will say that I was trying to get into chat and respond, but clearly that's not my forte tonight, trying to keep track of chat and then trying to keep track of all of that, stuff. But anyway, yeah, the USAID stuff, and I just want to see what Steve is saying. Yeah, well, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah,
Jack is coming back so he can get back on his roll.
I'll try to keep us on USA. Oh, there he is. Okay, good. I don't have to talk about USAID.
Thank you. I get it that people didn't go to a MUFON conference initially or read a Jacques Vallée book and CIA history. I understand that. But it's relevant. It becomes relevant. And yeah, when archaeologists are going to other nations and they're going there to dig, when there are government and non-government nonprofit agencies that are known to be conduits of intelligence agency funding, are going to war areas in order to, quote, negotiate peace, unquote. That just has a history of a documented history of being involved with intelligence agencies, and a lot of it bleeds into UFO stories. Yes, it does.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, I'm doing some looping back around research essentially, and I realized that some of the descriptions that Bosco Nodelkovic, who was working for USAID at the time, he alleges, gives of this Villas Boas abduction, he describes a small cubicle, which is accurate to Villas Boas's story. But taking that into account, less than like 3 years later, Dan Mitrione is in Brazil in the lead up to the Brazilian coup in 1964, teaching torture techniques to the police and the military. Um, definitely on the CIA payroll, but working for one of these humanitarian organizations, and that's sort of the trick. I do not like all the cuts to USAID that are essentially starving foreign populations, but that's why it's soft power, because it comes with all these benefits, but then it's sort of in the background, it's undercutting countries like sovereignty. Um, but Mitrione had this torture technique that essentially used a small box. He called it the refrigerator, and he'd put people in there. And I was thinking, that sounds just like the cubicle that's in the Villas Boas abduction. And again, the USAID connection is very important there. Um, yeah, I don't know. Bosco is an interesting case because it's hard to tell if it'd be pretty challenging, I feel like, to line all these things up, but that's not to say it couldn't be done. You know what I mean? Like both the Villas Boas abduction and CIA activity in South America at the time. He gets a lot of details right on both accounts. Um, yeah, but no, I think you're right on USAID. Yeah, and it seems like in South America, they essentially recognize that the CIA was involved in a lot of the UFO hijinks, less so than like an American looking at South American incidents are going to see that as, oh, that's UFOs, that's aliens. But in South America, they'd be much more liable to be like, this is probably covert action. And that's not to say it always is or always isn't. That's just, that's the culture that's been created there by decades of covert action.
I thought that was an interesting aspect of Leslie Kane's advocacy and activism in Central and South America, like in 2012 to 2016,
Yeah.
in that time frame. And Chile was on board with trying to get the UN to fund UFO research. And given the history that most people aren't aware of that you're talking about, I thought that completely sounded like a South American money grab. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. No, and Keen's another interesting case because that is like her background. Wasn't her first book on like being a journalist in, is it Rwanda? Another kind of like sticky strategic area as far as like global politics goes.
Well, show me a war and I'll show you, political deception and undermining. I mean, that's what it is.
Yeah, I think Bradley's right. I think it was Burma. Excuse me. Um, yeah, I've got to drop out for just a second. I'm sorry to do this to both of you. I'll be right back.
Hey, we've been dropping out off and on all night, so that's okay. Seems to be the way we're rolling. So while
So
we've got
what
this,
say you, Erica, about the intelligence agencies and getting into the financial aid that goes to other nations and
you know what? I mean,
such?
first of all, I have to say, like, and kind of reiterate what's going on in chat is it is very sad that we've dismantled. I don't know why that's, hang on, I'll pull this closer to me. You know, it is sad that we've dismantled USAID and that, you know, hundreds of thousands of people are starving to death.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you
I
guys hear me
can't
in
hear
chat?
you. Maybe other people can, but I'm not able to hear you.
Because my mic is saying that it is on. So if somebody could let me know in chat, that would be great. Anybody? Can you guys hear me? Clearly not. I'm telling you, it's saying my mic is on.
I can't hear you. No. We continue with our marvel of modern technology on this episode of UFO Classified with
Okay, so
Tanner
actually people
Boyle
in
and
chat can hear me, so I guess it's just you.
guest
Okay.
technically challenged host Jack Brewer as
Well,
Erica tries to get volume.
no, I've got if people can hear me. I don't know. Thank you guys. Thanks for letting me know. Anyway, yeah, I'm telling you.
Maybe reset. I don't know what to say.
Yeah, no, people in chat can hear me. And I'm just talking to you and you can't hear me. Yeah, I don't know, Jack. I think it's coming on your end. But anyway, yeah. And so, and Jason, I just want to say that, yeah, we are really in deep trouble, actually. And I do think it is very sad about USAID. So I just want to say to know that
Can
many.
you hear me, Erica? Can the audience hear you? I will reset then.
Okay. You guys, you're seeing this live. There are no edits. I'm telling you, this is just on the fly. Jack's hand. It's awesome. Here comes Tanner.
Yeah, sorry. I feel like that was somehow my responsibility because it happened when I left, you know.
Oh, my Lord. All right. And
Yeah.
everybody can hear us. Thank you. I'm telling you, tonight's the night. Stars are not aligning, but that's okay. We're having a roving conversation.
No, I kind of like this. It's like each person is tapping in, tapping out. It's like we're running a relay or something,
Oh, yeah.
you know.
I like that.
But yeah, where did we leave off? We're talking
USAID and
oh yeah. Well, and I think not only is that incredibly bad for these huge populations, but it shows that the Trump administration in general does not know how soft power works. It only knows how hard power works. And I think that's again coming up in Venezuela, where it would have used to have been a little more sneaky and covert, and now they're just doing whatever it is they're doing at this point.
well, I mean, I feel like we're living in everything is a reality show kind of phase.
Mhm.
And so it's just like, however good this looks in a little blurb and we've got our cameras around and yeah, it's an amazing time. But here comes Jack again. Da, 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 da.
All right, I'll leave now. No, I'm just kidding.
I know. And you're out.
Yeah. Well, Erica, Emily watches several reality shows set in Salt Lake City.
Oh my
Are you
Lord.
in any of them?
No. Oh Lord. Baby mama. You know, I would say I'm really sorry, Emily, because that is not how we roll out here. Those are just a handful of really special people. Mormon wives, and like, I'm assuming about the swingers out in Draper. That was a good one.
Maybe.
And then the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City and other special moments.
It's very diplomatic of you to call them special, I think.
Well, I mean, I I could go places, but yes, it's it's like watching some of the other shows that are set in Utah.
Hmm.
But
Yeah, do you feel misrepresented? I see. I'm originally from Kansas, and I always feel like Kansas gets misrepresented in popular culture because they assume it's either like Smallville or like The Wizard of Oz, and it's really neither of those things.
I feel like Utah a lot of times isn't misrepresented because, I mean, we've got this Mormon LDS culture here, and I think people have a pretty good idea of what that entails. And,
Mhm.
you know, um, which is interesting. But then I think with some of these new reality shows about this, I mean, it's so ridiculous. And it's embarrassing, actually. I mean, I know that they're laughing all the way to the bank, but I would be a little bit embarrassed if I was putting my family on TV and my small children, and
Yeah.
behaving that way. Anyway, those are my personal opinions. But Emily, hopefully when I get to see you in person, we can have a glass of wine and watch those shows.
Oh, she'd love nothing more than that, I think.
That would be fun. Oh, Tim Ballard's.
Oh, yeah. Did you guys hear that Tim Ballard was working with a remote viewer?
You know what? He has been for quite some time. Has he got a new remote viewer? Okay.
I think it may be the same one, but I don't think I realized that he calls her. I think he says that she was like in one of the programs, and I don't think it's true. I can't remember the name, um, but yeah, Ballard has recently gone on like an interesting little. I guess it's a rehabilitation tour with the journalist Jessica Reed Krause, who's kind of uh, you know, uh, Trump aligned. She was at the like Epstein binder release date. Do you
Oh, of
remember that?
course. Of
Yeah.
course. Yeah.
And she's writing stuff on Ballard and getting into like his paranormal interests, and I guess he's going all in on uh like remote viewing. I don't know if he's doing it himself yet, but I think that's any day now.
And for people who don't know who Tim Ballard is, he was the head of our rescue, and he was the Sound of Freedom was a big show put out by Angel Studios, and that was huge. Maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and they did quite the marketing campaign about that. And it was about exploitation of children in a foreign country. A lot of it was based allegedly on a lot of mistruths, and it involved people in high political power here in Utah. So it's been an interesting case because there have been women that have come out and attempted to hold him accountable for alleged sexual abuse on their part. And he, interestingly enough, premiered that movie with Trump in the audience.
Mhm.
So you can see the connections, and you've got this, again, an unfortunate and really despicable topic where you've got these people, roaming around and things. So I'm not surprised he's on the rehab tour. But yeah, I'll have to look into that.
Yeah, that same journalist is trying to do like Epstein was not a sex trafficker. He was simply taken advantage of by these people who are now trying to extort him. It's an extortion scheme. It's crazy. It's crazy what people are trying to rehabilitate these days. Um,
Well, they've got the propaganda machine going. It's like I mean, they're obviously, as we know, there are people in positions of power with a lot of money and influence, and they can run these little propaganda machines, which is unfortunate because, today we saw, unfortunately, that the DOJ chose to release 1% of what they were legally responsible to release. And so, after decades, women who've been seriously victimized and, cannot get any closure, shocking. And there is still the potential that this is still operating and other people are being victimized. And so that's very, very unfortunate. But
Yeah. Jack, have you ever run into any FOIA request with that many redactions?
I haven't followed this story real closely. I, just gather a little bit on social media. I have had FOIA clerks be smart alecks before, or attorneys maybe, that like I was thinking about that today. I don't even remember what the topic was, but one time they withheld some pages in full, and that's always a red flag to me. Like if we get a release that's like 30 pages with 4 withheld in their entirety and 26 either released in full or released with selective redactions, the 4 they withhold in full is always a red flag to me, and I'll appeal that under the argument that it could at least be redacted. Like if there's a name of an informant, there's an address of a minor that's a victim or whatever, then just redact it. And I was thinking today about a case where they sent me 3 pages that were redacted in full. When I don't remember which agency did that. I'd have to go find it. So they were like, okay, we redacted it. There you go. And I mean, I saw a FOIA researcher on social media tonight say something that I thought was on point, that every administration has always overclassified. They've always tried to withhold things that would be an embarrassment, even though that's not an exemption from release. In fact, that's what Erica and I argued with Uinta County when they wanted their talent contracts for Phenomicon withheld and exempted from disclosure. Was we argued, that embarrassment is not a, FOIA exemption, and that, contracts with the government are like, that's what the FOIA is for, that you're receiving payment from the government for services rendered. So I mean, everybody always tries to overclassify, everybody being a government agency, a presidential administration. This, though, I think it's clear that it goes, this is above and beyond ill-advised authorization of a drone strike or something like that. Like we're talking about legitimate efforts for national security that may have been misguided. We're talking about just irresponsible, often criminal, harmful behavior. That, the real irony to me is that so many of this administration's supporters were all about being for the victims of these types of crimes. It's particularly ironic in a sick and dark way that this is so clearly a cover-up by the current administration.
Yeah. Sorry, I always ask people about the Epstein stuff, and that's another thing that I could just kill the party buzz with.
And I've got to ask you, Jack, I mean, were they ever really concerned about the victims? I don't think they were ever really concerned about the victims. I think they were concerned about framing or degrading people of another political party.
Yeah, it depends on whether they were victims of Hillary or Donald, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So that, yeah, I mean, I've never heard a kind thing about, or any concern from, that side about victims of this, which is obviously very alarming, but here we are. And so let's get back out of the Epstein thing. That was fun. Let's
Sorry,
go
that
somewhere
was my
else.
fault.
No, it's okay. I mean, it's really, I mean, it's
No.
a,
Wow.
I mean, I've been absorbed with the news today, and it is really, it's sad, and it makes me angry, and it's very, very shameful for these women. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Never seems to get better, does it? Sorry, I bumped myself out.
no, I mean, I think that I think that if there's one thing that maybe perhaps this administration has shown us, it's the fact that there have been so many things that have been really deeply hidden for so long that now they all seem to be coming to light.
Yeah.
And people are starting to really understand the deception, these vast networks of things that are taking place. And the people involved, and it's really, like Amy's mentioning in chat, yeah, there is a huge network, and it's embroiled and embedded in some of the UFO, people as well.
Yeah.
I've noticed in some of the one in particular, a photo of some of the photos that are being released. I've noticed somebody that is involved in the UFO world, and then you hear of another person who is involved, who you mentioned earlier on the show, who is allegedly very heavily involved with the files. So,
Who did I mention earlier? Are you not going to name?
I don't know. Maybe somebody named Peter Thiel.
Oh, yes. Yeah, there is some interesting stuff with him coming out. And this is another case where, interestingly, a lot of the UFO podcast bro circuit is like trying to connect these things together. Like Epstein has everything to do with time travel and UFOs or things like that. Like Jason Durjani, who someone in chat asked about, is probably the most repugnant guy in the current wave. And I thought they learned their lesson like 10 years ago when he was essentially booted from all the parapsychology stuff. But yeah, no one learns their lesson. So he's back on the podcast circuit. He's talking about how Epstein and Ghislaine were like searching for Atlantis or something like that. Something just worthless stuff. I think he stole it from Dark Journalist anyway, who isn't that much better. So,
and isn't that like, and the whole thing, like, to me, is just really, it's shameful. I mean, there are people who have been in fear for their lives. There are people who are in hiding. There are people, who have been through so much trauma, and then to have people like that just demean and marginalize that whole, their whole experience, and to try to, pull in this crap, that really is one of the things that I despise the most about, this community, which I'm glad our community is not like that. But I mean, I noticed that when we did some work at Expanding Frontiers Research about the former executive director of MUFON, and how people were, he was involved. You can go to expandingfrontiersresearch.org to check out the court transcripts. He was involved in some of these things that we're talking about, and was convicted of that a crime. And it was amazing to see how many people gave him cover because of this. Well, he's just this close to learning about extraterrestrials, and people are framing him and all this crap. And it's just like, give me a break. If we can't separate fact from fiction, it's So no, I will not be interviewing him.
A really interesting aspect of that to me, Erica, was that when he paraded his character witnesses for the court that all spoke so highly of him, the judge commented that I'm paraphrasing here, but to the effect of you've inadvertently shown me all the more reason he should do prison time and needs to be put away, because people this close to him don't see what he's doing and still don't believe he's guilty with all the evidence that's been presented to the court. That is evidence of how manipulative and deceptive he is, and you're actually making an argument for why he should go to prison by, and instead of asking for leniency, continuing to argue he couldn't have done it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and two, I think, I mean, there's that, because they are very manipulative, but then there are people that are just stupid, you know, and don't want to look at the truth because they're so invested in our UFOs real. You know, we've been abducted, so of course you're going to be, you know, I mean, it's just, it is maddening, and I think it's very depressing.
That UFOs are real, thus Jan Harzen must be honest.
Mm.
And like, that's just logical fallacy. It's not causality, which kind of brings me as well to one of the things I found in my journey through research in UFOs is I end up at these different political figures, and I often wouldn't have been particularly interested in them, but I'd have never gotten particularly interested in the FBI and the CIA probably if I hadn't come into it on UFOs. And it's kind of an odd scenario that that's such a small percentage of what many of these agencies and these people do. And an example of that is I was speaking with some people about a book on politics, and Peter Thiel came up. And after a few people had shared on it, I mentioned, are you guys aware that he kind of dangles funding to the fringe community, like UFOs? And like in that community, it's a big deal about, well, what did Peter Thiel say? Have you been to Peter Thiel's party? I was at Peter Thiel's party. So-and-so introduced me to Peter Thiel. And they weren't aware of that. And I can understand why not. You know, that like if you're looking at global financing and controversial philanthropy and, you know, FBI probes about this, that, and the other on Thiel, I can understand where you may have not gotten around to Diana Walsh Pasulka yet. You know, but it's kind of an interesting flip that that's actually how I came into ever doing any FOIA requests on Thiel.
Right. Yeah. Well, no, and it is interesting because, like, again, this is a case where ufology is just like one part of a broader fringe spectrum where he's kind of dangling this funding. It goes into conspiracy, it goes into counterculture, because he's trying to make a counterculture, and to some extent, I'd say he's been successful, to continue his vision of the United States moving forward. He sees the utility in countercultural movements and arts and I think that's probably one of the reasons the ufology node was useful to him. Did we lost Jack again?
Of course, it's the again. Who's coming in and out of the clown car tonight?
For whatever reasons, the last couple times when one of y'all leave the studio, I lose the volume. I don't know what that's all about.
Can you hear us now?
can.
Okay, cool. All right. I don't remember what I was saying, but I think you're right. And I think the fact that you said something about getting interested in CIA and FBI figures through ufology, and I think the fact that you kept running into them so much says quite a bit on its own. And not that many people grapple with that fact.
And can I just like throw something in that I was thinking about? I know we've spent a lot of time talking about the CIA and our intelligence agencies here, and I think a lot of people in the UFO world in America do that, but we don't look at what is happening with other intelligence agencies and other countries that are actively involved in infiltrating what's going on here. And so I just want to talk to that. So Jack, what are your thoughts?
Oh, absolutely. That's my point entirely about Sanderson was in New York. And, you know, I think Pilkington's aware of that. I think Carrion's aware of that. You know, part of Carrion's theory on Roswell being used as a tool to break the Soviet diplomatic code, part of that theory goes through New York and information being sent through international channels. And I think it's really relevant, Erica, that like how much do we want to get into Russia acts credulous when it's advantageous to do so? Nick Redfern pointed me in the direction of a old State Department document where the American embassy in Russia took a UFO article that had been published by a Russian scientist in a Russian publication and translated it for the State Department back stateside. And you could I feel you can kind of read between the lines that the purpose of passing this along was for the State Department to have a better understanding of what the Russian hierarchy was telling the Russian population about UFOs. That like that was the point of what's this guy saying. And that's the document I know Eric has heard of. You may have heard of it, or you may recall, Tanner, that someone had penciled in, they highlighted a paragraph and wrote plant beside it about a saucer that was supposedly retrieved on an island in, I think it's Denmark, version, that case. And yeah, so Redfern and I were talking about it one time because it's heavily indicative of psyops. And I felt like an underlying theme there was the State Department, the embassy in Russia was advising state on here's what they're saying about UFOs. And to your point, Erica, they obviously were given a directive of keeping track of that. They weren't sending them articles about auto mechanics, you know. I mean, it wasn't arbitrarily identified as something State Department would have wanted to receive.
Unmute, Erica.
Lord have mercy on my soul. This is why I mean, this is why I need somebody to hold my hand here. But I mean, I want to go back to, and thanks for explaining that, Jack. But I do find it interesting that in our UFO culture here in America, it's like we're always saying it's the CIA, it's it's us, it's da 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 da. We're not really taking into account, that these are in probably more than likely a foreign operation, an influence campaign taking place here in America. And I think that's, I don't know. And again, we go back to different people wanting to undermine NASA or wanting to undermine our institutions and things like that. And I don't think we've given that enough credit, especially when it comes to this topic and how they can kind of weasel in and undermine things. So
Yeah, I think it's one of those arenas where because I read, it feels like I read a lot of stuff from the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and it seems like parapsychological conferences, UFO conferences, anything of this nature, where some like experimental physicists or something of that stripe, scientists are in this topic a lot. Um, you know, not that that brings any credence to it, but scientists get interested in these topics. And that just kind of becomes a stomping ground for this sort of information war between one and the other. It becomes incredibly difficult to tell who's tricking who, because sometimes it'll be like, oh, they're trying to get information from me, and the other person will probably be saying, oh, they're trying to get information from me, kind of spy versus spy type stuff. Um, yeah, and I have no doubt that's probably continued into the present. I think what's interesting is I always think like during the fall of the Soviet Union, you have UFO researchers going there. Jacques Vallée went there. There's some pretty major UFO cases right at that time period. And I always wonder, because that's at the exact same moment that American researchers are granted access to the Soviet military archives, or at least part of them.
right.
Uh, and you have to wonder, like, if those stories were seeded, or who they were seeded by, what purpose could they serve. That's one of those threads I've always kind of wanted to look into, but never gotten to. Emily got me Jacques Vallée's UFO Chronicles in the Soviet Union for Christmas, so thanks, Emily.
Wow.
One of the things I think you guys are getting at here is I've argued this is why some kind of formal UFO disclosure is an unrealistic pipe dream that's cultivated by either people that don't understand intelligence agencies or don't care and are just, exploiting the concept of disclosure for some other reason. Specifically, what I mean is if there is an incident that, with all of FBI's investigative tools, with all of CIA's operational resources, don't know what happened, there is, like, I can't overemphasize the lack of advantage to making that clear to everyone on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
As they would kind of assume, well, if I can't figure out it was the Air Force, if I can't figure out it was some private industrial company, I sure as hell don't want to let Japan or China or whoever it was know how much I don't know about what happened. And I mean, if you start saying this was us, this was us, this was us, well, then by process of elimination, you're showing what wasn't us or what we don't know what it was. And if no, I joke, but if no one's noticed, the intelligence agencies are not in the business of clarifying what they're doing and what they know for the rest of the world, to say the least. And that's why UFO disclosure is just an unrealistic
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of it, especially now, there are people that are concerned about getting government contracts, and there are foreign adversaries who, quite frankly, are trying to push for disclosure, and they want to understand what's going on with our technology. I mean, it's really cut and dry. It's pretty simple. There's nothing extraterrestrial about what's going on in the current disclosure narrative, but
Yeah.
Always, always, always been an intelligence technique, be it American, Soviet, German, whoever, to sow dissension in the adversary's population. I mean, that's what Pele, that we talk about now and then, went to prison for, is, yeah. And Erica and I talk about it here on YouTube all the time, Tanner, that basically Donald Kehoe solicited intelligence officers to leak classified information to him. That's essentially what the man did. And it's not hard to see how that's just not cool with the FBI, you know?
Yeah. Well, yeah. And at the same time, you kind of wonder, like, to what ends? But,
Yeah.
but I guess that's still going on.
To Erica's point, that is sowing dissension. You end up an organization with 14,000 paid subscribers that are on the bandwagon of the CIA and the Air Force are lying to us about flying saucers. Like that, I'll put it this way. It's my opinion that if adversaries like Russia weren't involved in initiating it, they weren't going to miss the chance once it got rolling.
Yeah. I think too of, like, Colonel Phil Corso, where it's like this. He's kind of like a Pele type figure, and most people don't really even think about him in those terms. But he was part of a collection of former and current intelligence officers who were, I think this is Peter Dale Scott wrote this. He said they were enemies of the CIA from the right because they thought they were full of commie pinkos and they needed to invade the Soviet Union as soon as possible. And that's like decades and decades before any of his claims about flying saucers. But then he serves as a longtime aide to Strom Thurmond's famous segregationist.
shocker.
Yeah, he was really not a good guy, and it's one of those cases where he's ganging up with all of these other intelligence people who are doing, like, I mean, this is too big. You should have Martin Cannon talk about this sometime. The Michael Golanowski affair. I'm sure Jack maybe you come across that. Golanowski. I may be pronouncing that wrong.
I'm not familiar with that. I heard Mark explain a lot of research to Emily of CIA officers. And yeah, he is on point with a lot of stuff. I think you're right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I want to go back a little bit to Jacques Vallée because Jeff Knox who was on the show. The last time I had a show that was really good, but I want to just talk a little bit about he's mentioning that Vallée is not. I mean, and I'm putting words in his mouth, but it's kind of the gist is a questionable narrator, and I've thought that for a long, long time. I mean, this guy has been seeding stories and hanging out with all of the people that are we've called out for a long, long time. Mm-hmm. And what is the gain there, especially when you've got somebody who will release all of his files, but there's a 10-year wait list to make sure that he's passed away, and so what is his game? I don't think he is been on the up and up. And I think that, for me, because I've done the same thing that you have, Tanner, I've got, all of his, books and journals, and I'm going through and looking at these pieces. And then I'm also listening to the way he's talking about certain things. And, oh, he's in this country. And, oh, he's talking
Yeah.
about women like this. And, oh, just all of these things. And I mean, he to me, I think, is probably at the end of the day going to be one of the people in the whole history of this topic that has been a complete, I don't know, just a complete false icon.
Well, I respectfully disagree.
Okay.
I don't believe Jacques Vallée. I don't think he's onto anything with the UFO topic usually. But I think the journals have provided this like insane resource as far as like, who is talking to who, when did certain things start circulating in ufology. And it's undoubtedly he has probably contributed to seeding things. But unfortunately, that's what all of them do, and he's the only one that wrote it down in his diaries. I'm thinking, for instance, like it also reveals just like his interest in venture capital, which I think is going to
Right.
become incredibly important as we move further along into the time when venture capitalists will rule over us all in like 5 years or something like that. And I think you start to notice where he gets some of his ins, and it becomes interesting. Because I mean, he gets associated with a lot of these people simply by virtue of working at Stanford in the early 70s, and that's like all of them are just as unreliable as he is. And unfortunately, I think he's probably the best writer ufology has to offer. English isn't even his first language, and he writes better than any of the other schmucks. No offense to me and Jack and anybody else who writes about this stuff, but yeah, no one's done prose like him, I feel. Yeah.
And I know, I mean, I've found some interesting, things, in his journals, and Jack and I have gone down, rabbit holes and done FOIA requests and things like that. I mean, he does leave an important kind of a blueprint for things, and it does offer a good insight. His journals offer a good insight into what is potentially, going on in his mind and in his business, sphere and all of those things. So that is important, but I do question kind of the motivations at the end of the day.
Well, and I think he's got, so in the 90s, for a brief period, he was almost saying a line similar to what we're saying tonight, which I find kind of interesting, but he's completely left that. Like when he was writing Revelations, that book is essentially like, and this is probably true in Messengers of Deception too. He writes essentially about cases being used for intelligence games, both sides. The stories seem to be nonsense. He's friends with all these CIA people, and he's like, they're telling me a bunch of nonsense. They're making up lies about me. So it's interesting to see he was aware of the kind of things going on, when I feel like none of the other people in those circles would be like, hey, my CIA buddy lied to me about UFOs. They just go along with it. Unfortunately, I feel like he's forgotten all the lessons that I learned from Revelations and Messengers of Deception.
But I mean, or was he just really adept at doing the same thing that Bigelow and crew does, which is, we're going to say, oh my gosh, this is energy weapons. These are, it's da 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 da, and then kind of, move the ball, and give a little bit of truth, and then, a lot of pushing people down the wrong hole. I mean, he's very adept at doing that. All these people are.
Well, I think
Tanner,
so.
reliable, and the question was no sooner out of my mouth than I thought, don't put yourself in a position where you have to trust him like anybody else. If he can't show receipts, it's just a story, just like with anybody else.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. That's why. So I've written that whole series, Forbidden Science Dispatches. Essentially, I'm reading the journals chronologically, and every once in a while, I'll come across something that I kind of focus on, and that's when I'm usually like, all right, let's see if this pans out. If I do some extra legwork on it, and sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. Interestingly, I feel like Jacques gets things wrong mostly when he's reporting the words of other people. So I don't know if that's intentional or if he's just being fed lies all the time. Because, like, in the Gulf Breeze 6 case, he talks about how Pudov is talking to him, and he's like, well, actually, the Gulf Breeze 6 were trying to raid my remote viewing clinic down in Austin and discredit Scientology or something like that. It's like, did Hal Pudov actually say that? Also, something about Ron Pandolfi investigating them, which I don't think was true because he was CIA, DIA. They were investigated by INSCOM. Who knows? But again, it's like, unfortunately, I don't think you reach an understanding of the inner circles without valet, and that's painful. But you can kind of do some reverse legwork through what he's written, because he's the only one who's kept like detailed notes and doesn't just ramble on Joe Rogan. Although he does that now, but he didn't used to.
No, that's true. I mean, I've really, like I said, I've got so many notes and post-it notes and, I mean, just tons of things in every one of his books, because I just find it fascinating. But I definitely have, um, over the years, just kind of asked myself, okay, these guys are all like really good at promoting the same narrative, but one's a good cop one day, one's a bad cop the other day, one's da 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 da. But you're absolutely right. He has been the one who's put things down, and
Mhm.
and so he's a fascinating guy.
Well, if anything, even if he's like lying in them, I feel like he makes the others look so bad that he still can't come across the worst. Because some of the things these guys say that he records in that diary and uh, have just completely not panned out or seem to be a complete fabrication is interesting. Yeah, that's believe it or not, I've actually tried to start a journal so I can keep track of like rumors as they occur. And I can't do it. I can't write every single day. I can't even write every month. It's crazy. I don't know how he did it. Maybe he didn't. He's making it up post haste or something.
Well, I think a lot of, back in the day when we didn't have computers and we weren't on social media and had like, all of that put down there, I think people were a lot better at journaling things. I
Hmm.
know, like Anne Druffel, I mean, I've got boxes and boxes of her journals.
Yeah.
And I really need to spend some time and go through those because she was detailing every phone call, every conversation, all of her dreams, all of her, weird happenings in her life and things like that. And I go in spurts where I'm really trying to journal. And for me, when I have conversations with people, I'm always writing, things down so I can remember things. And it's fascinating. Not that anybody could ever read my writing. So everybody's safe, just so you know. But
Oh yeah, yeah. No, that's fine. I condone every single thing I say being recorded at every time. Uh, but no, I kind of miss that because I like we're sort of blessed with a wealth of ufologists who have their notes in like special collections and things like that. And you guys are doing the legwork to actually keep those things up and running because some universities they just sit in basements and nobody comes to look at them until there's a biographer. So you guys are making that a little more accessible for people. Um, but yeah, I don't know. Like I didn't want to come off as too defensive of valet, but because there's a lot of I think a lot of it just comes from him. Uh, Ufology does not have. There's not a lot of great writers, And there's not a lot of people who look at things from more than one angle. And even he is kind of cursed with this overarching vision explanation of the UFO myth, the like matrix control system, whatever. It just sounds like simulation theory, kind of. And I don't buy that one bit. And it's more interesting when he's looking at other kinds of explanations. But just from like a prose standpoint and sort of like actually trying to do some like analytical legwork, it's slim pickings, especially before like 2000. You know?
Oh, you're not kidding.
Yeah.
I disagree with just about every opinion Billy Cox expresses on UFOs.
Oh, yeah.
With them in some other areas, but on UFOs, I pretty much am not on board with him. And I thoroughly enjoy reading his stuff all the time because the man can write. Yeah. Yeah.
It's exactly the same for me. It's a great example, actually. Because no, I do feel like it's rare. And I mean, that's why I like your guys' stuff, honestly, because, you know, UFO conversations are often not that interesting, and UFO writing is also not often that interesting. And I feel like it should be.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just have to say, Tanner, and you know, I mean, my valet, you know, reaction is just from having to deal with, you know, just interactions with this whole crew.
Oh, I
You know,
have no doubt they're the worst.
and it's just it's interesting. I mean, and so but I want to just say that to me, like you're one of the best researchers in the topic currently and in the past. I mean, I really respect your work and the way you break things down and the thoughtful conversations that you have. I mean, 99.9% of the people in this topic do not do that. And you
Well,
do.
I
And I really
appreciate that.
appreciate that about you.
You're gonna make me cry for Christmas. Is that what you
Oh,
wanted?
it's a
Yeah.
Christmas miracle.
Yeah.
It's
Happy holidays, by the
yeah,
way.
I know.
I don't
Happy
think
holidays.
I meant to tell you guys that when we started, but I forgot.
And it just seems like I'm in Utah and we've had no snow. And so
Oh yeah.
it was like 70 degrees the other day. And it's like, what in the world? It just doesn't even feel like Christmas.
I've been getting pounded by snow today, but I'm going back to Kansas for Christmas, and it's going to be 75 degrees.
Wow.
And I think the culture shock of being in the 30s and going to that will not make me in the Christmas spirit.
Wow.
Dang. Is that unusual for Kansas though?
Yeah.
Dang.
I don't think it's a good sign.
No. Well,
I mean, Jack, you're probably used to the cool, crisp 102 year round, right?
Yeah. Kind of a thing that people swim on Christmas, like just to do it kind of thing. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But I agree with Erica about your research. Tanner goes into the areas of a topic that often get overlooked as matters of convenience or because they're left unresolved, and I can really appreciate that doesn't mean don't note them in the article, don't note them in the chapter just because you don't know what it meant. Still, so and so contacted him on such and such a date. I don't know why. That still needs to be in there, that kind of stuff, and you do a great job with that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. My recent favorite has been, um, it's from Valet again. He mentions a phone call he got from this guy who wanted him to invest in some Ponzi scheme type thing. And I figured out that it was probably a friend of Robert Booth Nichols, who is connected to the whole octopus conspiracy. And that is probably my favorite thing that I have come across. Because the way that Valet describes the call sounds exactly right. Says he's friends with Lazar, and there's a John Lear connection there. The descriptions of the like Ponzi scheme are exactly what he did in the early 2000s with Bayou Financial Group. It's crazy. And like Valet is good for things like that. I don't think he's going to answer any questions, but he'll leave you with questions that I think will sometimes lead fruitful places, and sometimes will lead you to absolutely nowhere, as you said.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. And how fascinating, again, it just all goes back to these weird, I mean, even though it goes back to the same players in the UFO world or out of the UFO world. It's very, very fascinating to me. And you can read more about what you're talking about on your blog, Getting Spooked. So if you go to Tanner Boyle at substack.com, you can find your blog and then also your great shows that you're doing with your friends. Getting out there, and
you guys are coming on for sure. I have that planned for after the new year, because I'm working on a book currently. A little short announcement, but I'm gonna have to be doing more podcasts, and you guys are some of the best researchers I know. So I think we'd have a fun conversation there.
we would love that. Thank you. And I just think the world of you and Emily. I just want to give Emily a shout out, and Steve, and so many great people, and Jason, and I mean all of you in chat. If I don't mention you, please don't feel bad. I'm so sorry. But and Amy, I just want to say Amy always has great, really great comments. And one day I need to get Amy on the show. And then Jeff and all of you guys, thank you. We really have a thoughtful and credible community here. And I appreciate that. And it's been fun, Tanner. Like I mention this every time I talk to you, or Emily. It's like it's fun for me to see a younger generation like coming in and being thoughtful and doing great research and hopefully leading, all of us on to better things. So we're not going to continue this cycle of idiocracy for the next 70 years.
I'm sometimes hopeful, but often I am not.
Well, we're going to start a new year.
Yeah.
This is my sparkle fingers. That means good things for the New Year's. And we should like make a goal that we're going to journal.
Yes, I'm going to continue it. My next entry will be like, oops, sorry, I missed 7 months,
May I plug EFR quickly, please, Erica?
Oh, I guess if you have to plug EFR, she's.
Thank you. Yes, please consider expanding Frontiers Research for your year-end giving. In the show description, you will see a link to a GoFundMe page that we recently launched that our guest has supported, folks in chat have supported. And if you haven't supported it yet, we hope that you will find a way to do so. It is raising funds for Freedom of Information Act requests and the research, the public records requests we do. And it explains some of the records that have already been identified at the National Archives. And we're looking forward to getting and sharing. And your financial support is very meaningful to an organization like EFR that is low budget and efficiently run with low overhead. So every bit helps. And thank you. Hope you enjoyed the show tonight. I know I certainly did. And thank you, Erica.
Yeah, thank you, Jack. And thanks, Tanner, so much for everything. And I appreciate your work. And it's been a fun conversation. Everybody in chat loved it. And so we'll get a panel together for the new year. And thank you so much, and have fun with Emily.
Oh yeah.
Hopefully she's going to bed soon, but
she's probably half asleep. Maybe if I go, hey, wake up, she'll wake up.
Well, I hope you guys have a wonderful holiday. I don't know. I don't think we're going to be doing a show until after Christmas. But Merry Christmas, everyone. Happy holidays, and be safe. And thank you so much. And like Jack said, thank you so much for contributing and helping support EFR. We really appreciate your contributions, and thank you, Tanner and Emily and people who've supported us. We really appreciate it. We've got lots of great things coming for the new year, and make sure you click like and subscribe, not only to UFO Classified, but make sure you find Tanner's blog and support him, and also go to Expanding Frontiers Research on YouTube, expandingfrontiersresearch.org, to check out all of our work. And you guys, peace out. Happy holidays.
See you guys.
Have a good one, guys.